It was a new dawn, not just outside the ancient walls, but within them, a dawn that shimmered with the soft glow of change. Liora stood at the center of the library's heart, a place once burdened by silence and shadows, now alive with gentle light and the soft murmur of dreams finally free. The curse that had bound the souls within these books, that had exacted a toll so cruel and unyielding, was lifted. The air no longer felt thick with the weight of sacrifice, but danced lightly with promise. It was as if the library itself breathed anew, its endless shelves no longer a prison but a sanctuary. Liora's eyes traced the golden glow that pulsed gently through the stacks, each tome humming with a peaceful vitality that had been absent for decades, perhaps centuries. She felt the lingering echo of every soul once trapped here, no longer silent, no longer dormant. Their voices whispered softly, no longer cries for freedom, but songs of hope and renewal. It was a transformation that filled Liora with a profound mix of awe and solemn responsibility. A shimmer beside her caught her attention. Eleanor's ethereal form took shape smoothly from the ambient light, her pale blue robes flowing like water stirred by a gentle breeze. The mentor spirit's eyes held a depth of wisdom and a quiet joy that mirrored Liora's own burgeoning hope. "The library breathes with balance now," Eleanor said, her voice a melodic murmur that seemed woven from the very air. "The sacrifice of old has been replaced by a harmony of respect and freedom. But with this change comes responsibility. You must be its guardian, Liora, protector of the knowledge and the souls who seek it, without the cost that once chained them." Liora nodded, the weight of Eleanor's words settling into her bones. She had come here running from a past too loud and suffocating, seeking refuge in a place that demanded too much. Now she stood ready to protect that refuge for others, to guard it with the fierce tenderness born of her own journey. From the shadows of the shelves, Tamsin emerged. Her dark curls framed a face softened by a calm that had once seemed impossible. No longer restless, no longer bound by the library's cruel enchantment, she moved with a grace that spoke of liberation. Their eyes met across the aisles. A silent acknowledgement passing between them, shared history of pain, rebellion, and ultimate survival. "It's different now," Tamsin said quietly, her voice steady. "We don't have to fight just to be free. We can live." Liora smiled, a bittersweet warmth filling her chest. "Yes, and we'll make sure it stays that way." At her feet, Milo stretched and curled into a soft ball, purring with a contentment that seemed to echo the library's new pulse. The stray cat, once a simple companion, had revealed itself as a subtle guardian of the Magican, anchor to the world beyond these walls. His bright eyes caught the morning light, glinting with a knowing spark. The sounds of the library had changed too. No longer the oppressive silence that had pressed against her skin. The air was alive with the soft rustling of pages, turning, whispered stories, spoken in voices both ancient and new. It was a symphony of life, knowledge, and dreams thriving in delicate balance. Liora walked slowly through the aisles, her fingers brushing the spines of countless books, each a sleeping soul finally at peace. She could feel the magic now as a gentle current flowing beneath her skin, a promise that knowledge need not come at the cost of life, that sanctuary could be real. But even as hope blossomed within her, a quiet question lingered: how to maintain this fragile balance. The power that had once corrupted the Curator still lingered in the shadows, a reminder of the dangers inherent in the hoarding and misuse of knowledge. Could she protect the library from such darkness without becoming a prison's warden herself? She stopped before a tall shelf, the morning light casting long, warm shadows that danced like living things. The library was awake, alive in ways she had never dared imagine, and she was ready to guard, to learn, and to welcome those seeking refuge within these walls. Outside, the city stirred with the first breath of dawn, but within the sleeping library, a new day was truly beginning. A day where dreams were free to breathe, where knowledge was a gift, and where Liora's story was only just unfolding. And as she turned toward the vast horizon of books and souls, a quiet thrill ran through her veins, a whisper of the countless stories yet to be told, the lives yet to be touched, and the sanctuary she would fiercely protect. The sleeping library had awoken, and so had she. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, it felt like freedom. Liora's steps echoed softly against the polished stone floor as she moved between towering shelves heavy with books, their spines humming faintly under her touch. Each tome was a world, a soul, a slumbering memory waiting to be honored rather than exploited. For a long moment, she stood still, her pale fingers tracing the gold-embossed title of a volume that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat beneath her skin. The weight of what she had endured, the years lost, the souls she had met, the battles fought settled around her like a mantle. Yet beneath it all, a steady resolve took root. Eleanor's pale blue form shimmered into view beside her, the gentle guardian spirits, translucent robes flowing like liquid moonlight. "The library has chosen you," she said softly, her voice a soothing melody that seemed to weave through the dust motes, dancing in the sunbeams. "Not as a prisoner, but as a protector. The magic must be tempered with compassion." Liora nodded, the words echoing a truth she had come to understand through hardship and heartache. "I will keep them safe," she promised, her voice steady despite the tremor of emotion beneath. "No one else should lose what I lost. No one should pay with their years." Together, they began the delicate work of weaving new enchantments through the library's vast magic. Eleanor's hands moved like wisps of smoke, tracing runes of protection and balance. Liora added her own intent, hope, empathy, guardianship, binding the spells with care. The shelves glowed softly, the books settling into a peaceful slumber, no longer a prison but a sanctuary. Milo, the sleek black cat who had silently followed Liora since her first hesitant steps into the library, wound between her ankles. His bright eyes flickered with unspoken knowledge, a living talisman grounding Liora in the waking world. As she crouched to stroke his fur, a small purr rumbled through him, a reminder that even amid magic and dreams, life persisted. The hours slipped by unnoticed as Liora walked the labyrinth of aisles, her fingers brushing against the spines of books that once held captive souls, each one now a quiet friend, freed from the torment of endless dreaming. Her heart swelled with a bittersweet ache, joy, mingled with loss, hope, tempered by the cost she bore. At last, the fading light of twilight spilled through the stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across the marble floor. Liora ascended the spiral staircase to the highest chamber of the library's tower, a place where the boundary between dreams and reality felt thinnest. From the lofty vantage point, she gazed out over the sleeping city, its rooftops bathed in the soft glow of dusk. The library pulsed beneath her feet, a living entity breathing with quiet power. She breathed deeply, feeling the weight of her new role settle firmly on her shoulders. "I will watch over you," she whispered to the library, to the souls within, and to herself. "I will guard your secrets and your dreams. This sanctuary will be a refuge, not a cage." A sudden breeze stirred the curtains, carrying with it the faintest scent of jasmine and old paper. Milo leaped onto the windowsill, tail flicking with alertness. Liora smiled despite the solemnity of the moment. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt truly anchored, rooted, not in fear or flight, but in purpose. As the stars began to prick the velvet sky, the sleeping library awoke not as a prison, but as a beacon, and Liora, its new guardian, stood watch, ready for whatever dreams or dangers the night might bring. And yet, even in this quiet triumph, a question lingered in her mind. How would she balance the protection of this place with the relentless demands of those who would seek its refuge? The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Liora was not alone. She carried the library's legacy, and with it, the fragile hope of a future reclaimed. The night deepened, and somewhere within the stacks, a book stirred. It was no longer the dim, dusty glow of a forgotten place, but a vibrant, living illumination that seemed to breathe through the stained glass windows and curl around the ancient shelves like a gentle tide. I stood at the center of this renewed sanctuary, feeling the pulse of magic thrumming beneath the floorboards and whispering through the air. The sleeping library, once a cage of silent voices and stolen years, had transformed into something reborn, a place of refuge, healing, and hope. I brushed a stray lock of dark hair from my face, my pale skin tingling with the warmth that filled the room. The shadows had receded, replaced by a kaleidoscope of colors dancing across the stone floor. Every book around me seemed to hum softly, their dreaming souls no longer trapped in torment but at peace, their voices harmonizing in a gentle chorus that echoed through the stacks. Liora, a familiar voice whispered, delicate as the rustle of autumn leaves. I turned to see Eleanor's shimmering form materialize beside me, her pale blue robes flowing like liquid light. Her eyes, once clouded with melancholy, now held a serene wisdom that comforted and steadied me. "The library listens to you now," she said, her voice weaving through the air like a soft melody. "You have mended what was broken, but remember the balance you hold is fragile. Knowledge and magic demand respect, not sacrifice without end." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle deep within me. The journey had changed me irrevocably. I was no longer the frightened runaway who had stumbled through that creaking door months ago. I was the guardian now, protector of these dreaming souls and the mysteries they kept. As I absorbed her counsel, a sudden movement caught my eye. Tamsin stepped forward, her dark curls catching the light, her intense eyes softened by the freedom she now embraced. There was a grace to her that hadn't been there before, a lightness in her step as if the years stolen from her had been returned in spirit, if not in time. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said quietly, her voice edged with bittersweet relief. "Thank you, Liora, for fighting, for believing." Her gaze lingered on the shelves, then met mine with a fierce, hopeful spark. "I'll carry this freedom beyond these walls." Her words filled me with a profound sense of responsibility. The library was no longer just a refuge for lost souls. It was a beacon for those seeking solace, knowledge, and healing. And I was its keeper. Beneath my feet, a soft purring stirred my attention. Milo, the stray cat who had silently accompanied me since the beginning, wound between my legs and settled at my feet. His sleek black fur gleamed in the shifting light, and his emerald eyes reflected the library's magic, a bridge between the waking world and the dream realms. I knelt to stroke his fur, feeling a comforting warmth radiate from him. In that simple act, I found a grounding presence, a reminder that while the library was a place of magic and mystery, it was also a home. The echoes of the past lingered in the corners of the library, memories of fear, loss, and sacrifice. But here, in this renewed sanctuary, they were tempered by the promise of the future. I could feel it in the air, a shimmering thread of hope weaving through the shelves, binding us all together. And as I stood among the whispering books, I made a silent vow to guard this place with all that I was, to honor the sacrifices made, and to ensure that the sleeping library would never again be a prison, but a place where dreams awaken, knowledge flourishes, and healing begins. The journey had been long and fraught with peril, but as the light danced around me and the voices of the dreaming souls rose in quiet harmony, I knew that this was only the beginning. The sleeping library awoke, not just in magic, but in spirit, and I was ready to guide its new dawn. And so, with Milo at my side and the library's heart beating steady beneath my hands, I stepped forward into the promise of what was to come, a future forged from the echoes of the past, bright with the hope of endless tomorrows. But even as peace settled over the stacks, I couldn't help but wonder what new stories would find their way here, what lost souls would seek refuge within these walls, and what sacrifices might still be demanded in the name of knowledge and freedom. The library was alive again, and its story was far from over. Tamsin stood at the center of the cavernous chamber, her dark curls tangled around her face, eyes blazing with determination even as her hands trembled slightly. They were wrapped in threads of shimmering silver-blue magic, the bindings that had held her captive for decades within the dreaming tomes. Tonight was the night she would challenge that captivity. Liora stood a few steps behind her, clutching the fragile volume that had revealed the incantation needed to undo the bindings. The candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the high shelves that towered like ancient sentinels. Eleanor's ethereal form hovered nearby, her pale blue glow steady and serene. Even the oppressive presence of the Curator seemed to waver in the charged atmosphere, though his shadowy figure lingered at the edges of the chamber, silent but watchful. "Are you ready?" Liora asked softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Tamsin's gaze met hers, fierce yet tempered with a hint of vulnerability. "I've waited too long," she said. "I'm ready." Taking a deep breath, Tamsin began to chant, her voice steady despite the weight of the words. The incantation was ancient, woven from threads of forgotten languages and the raw essence of the library's magic. As her voice rose and fell, the shimmering bindings tightened for a moment, as if resisting her will, before beginning to unravel like strands of gossamer caught in a breeze. The chamber thrummed with energy. The very air seemed alive, vibrating with the tension between imprisonment and release. Liora felt a tug at her own spirit, a pulse of the library's enchantment reaching for her as if warning her of the cost. Suddenly, the bindings snapped, sending a cascade of luminous fragments into the air. They swirled like fireflies caught in a gentle storm before dissolving into nothingness. Tamsin collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but the light in her eyes shone brighter than ever the light of freedom. Around them, the library seemed to exhale, the oppressive weight that had settled for so long lifting in a whisper of released sighs. The silence that followed was heavy but filled with possibility. Liora stepped forward, kneeling beside Tamsin. "You did it," she said, reaching out to grasp her hand. Tamsin smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and joy. "I'm free, but it's strange. At all this time, the world outside feels like a place I barely remember." "You're not alone," Liora assured her. "We'll figure it out, together." Eleanor's shimmering form drifted closer, her voice gentle and full of warmth. "Your courage has undone a great burden. The library's magic will never be the same." The Curator, his gaunt face partially concealed beneath shadowy robes, stepped forward with a slow, deliberate grace. His eyes, glowing faintly like embers, held a flicker of something almost human. "You have disrupted the balance," he said, voice low and echoing. "But perhaps this change is inevitable." Tamsin rose to her feet, steady now, the fire of defiance rekindled. The cost of hoarding knowledge without compassion is too great. The library should be a sanctuary, not a prison. The curator regarded her silently for a long moment before retreating into the shadows. The battle was far from over, but a new chapter had begun. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of a corner alcove, Liora and Tamsin sat side by side beneath the gentle glow of a flickering candle. The tension that had always defined their relationship softened into something more fragile and profound. "What will you do now?" Liora asked, her voice tentative. Tamsin looked out beyond the towering shelves, her gaze distant yet hopeful. "I don't know. The years lost are gone forever, and the future is uncertain. But I want to live it on my own terms, not confined by magic or fear." Liora nodded, understanding the weight carried in those words. "You have a place here, if you want it." "Thank you," Tamsin said softly, squeezing Liora's hand. "For everything." As dawn began to filter through the stained glass windows, casting pale gold light on the worn floorboards, Tamsin approached the ancient doors of the library. She paused, turning back to glance at Liora, who stood silently watching. There was hope in her eyes, mingled with the sorrow of parting. "Goodbye, Liora," she said, voice steady but carrying the unspoken promise of return. "Goodbye, Tamsin," Liora replied, her heart tight with a mixture of hope and loss. Tamsin stepped into the misty morning, the world beyond both daunting and inviting. The library behind her was no longer a cage, but a place reborn, transformed by sacrifice and the courage to change. Liora watched until the figure faded into the rising light, the silence around her filled with the echoes of what had been and the fragile promise of what was yet to come. She turned back inside, the weight of her new role settling over her like a mantle. The sleeping library was awake now, ready to welcome those seeking refuge, knowledge, and healing under her watchful eye. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, the future felt wide open, a dreamscape waiting to be explored. Pale blue light shimmered through the high windows, filtering like delicate silk across the worn wooden floors and endless shelves. Eleanor's form hovered beside me, translucent and fragile, her flowing robes rippling with the faintest hint of a breeze that seemed to come from nowhere. I sat on the low bench beneath the towering stacks, my hands folded tightly in my lap, my breath caught somewhere between grief and a tentative hope. Eleanor's voice was a whisper, yet it filled the vast space with a gentle insistence. "You have come far, braver than you know. The library, it is no longer just a place of bindings and sacrifice. It is becoming something new, something alive because of you." I swallowed hard, the weight of her gaze settling on me like a mantle. But how? How do I keep it safe without becoming like the curator? How do I protect the souls without trapping them again? Her shimmering eyes softened, reflecting the flickering light like pools of still water. "Compassion, Liora, not control. The magic here is old and wild, but it listens to the heart. You must guide it with kindness, with understanding. The bindings that once held the souls captive can be transformed and broken by force, but by love and respect." I wanted to believe her, but the ache in my chest reminded me of all the years lost, all the pain endured. It feels impossible, like I'm standing on the edge of a vast chasm, unsure if I can leap. Eleanor's form drifted closer, her presence warmed despite the ethereal chill. "You are not alone. The souls, the library, they are part of you now, as much as you are of them. And Milo will watch over you, as he has always done." A faint rustle caught my attention. Milo, the stray cat with eyes too knowing for any ordinary creature, padded silently into the room, curling beside my feet. His gaze met mine, steady and calm, an anchor in the shifting tides. "Remember," Eleanor whispered, "the library awakens only when it is cared for with an open heart. It will test you, challenge you, but it will also nurture you." The light around her began to waver, flickering like a candle about to go out. I reached out instinctively, my fingers brushing through the space where her hand once was. A soft, shimmering warmth lingered where she had touched me. "I must go now," she said, voice fading like a song trailing into silence. "But I will always be with you, in every whispered secret and every dream that the library holds." Eleanor's form dissolved slowly into a cascade of sparkling motes, drifting upward like fireflies caught in a gentle breeze. The library seemed to exhale, the shadows retreating slightly, as if mourning and celebrating all at once. Left alone, the silence was profound but not empty. My hand found a glowing tome on the bench beside me, its cover warm and humming softly. The pulse of the library's magic thrummed beneath my fingertips, steady and alive. I stood slowly, the weight of responsibility settling upon me, heavy but not crushing. Outside the tall windows, the first light of dawn spilled in, casting long shadows and painting the shelves with gold and amber hues. The library was waking, not as a prison, but as a sanctuary. I caught Milo's gaze and smiled faintly, a quiet promise forming in the depths of my heart. I would carry the legacy Eleanor entrusted to me. I would guard this place with all the compassion and wisdom I could muster. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it was lit by hope. And as the library stirred around me, alive with endless stories and sleeping souls, I felt the fragile but fierce beginnings of renewal. But even as warmth filled the air, a whisper of unease lingered just beneath the surfacer, reminder that the balance I must keep would not be easily won. The library had awakened, and so had the trials that would come with it. I took a deep breath, my fingers curling around the spine of a book that seemed to hum with possibility. The journey was far from over. It was only just beginning. And so, beneath the pale light of dawn, the sleeping library awoke, and I stood ready to guide it into the future. The shadows would come again. I knew that much, but I would face them with an open heart and a fierce, fragile hope. For the library, for the souls within, and for myself. The end of Eleanor's story was the beginning of mine, and the library's song continued, eternal and ever-changing, waiting for the next chapter to be written. With that thought, I stepped forward into the awakening light. The promise of a new dawn stretched out before me like a fragile, glowing thread to follow. The heart of the sleeping library, once a place of shadows and whispered fears, now thrummed with a soft, steady pulsar rhythm born of renewal and delicate balance. I stood alone amidst towering stacks, their spines worn and weathered, each book a vessel of a sleeping soul. Their dreams no longer chains, but threads weaving a tapestry of hope. From the depths of the shadows, a faint ember glow flickered, an echo of the Curator's presence, lingering like a ghost tethered to the magic he once sought to control. His gaunt figure, cloaked in robes darker than midnight, appeared at the edge of my vision, eyes glowing faintly like smoldering coals. I did not flinch. Instead, I welcomed the memory, the legacy of a man consumed by ambition and the price he paid for it. The Curator had been a scholar, much like me once was hungry for knowledge, desperate to escape the confines of mortality. But in his quest for immortality, he became a prisoner of his own desire, binding himself and countless souls within these walls. I could feel the weight of his tragedy, a cautionary tale etched into the very fabric of the library. As I contemplated his fate, a gentle presence emerged beside me. Her Her ethereal form shimmered with a pale blue light, robes flowing like liquid moonlight. She regarded me with eyes full of ancient sorrow and enduring wisdom. "You carry a heavy burden, Liora," she whispered, her voice like the rustle of parchment. "The Curator's ambition was his undoing, but his story need not be yours. Guard this place with compassion. Let knowledge be a light, not a chain." Her words settled over me like a bomb. The sacrifices of the past weighed on me, but I felt a burgeoning resolve to honor them by choosing a different path, one where the magic of the library would nurture rather than imprison. Around us, the walls pulsed faintly, alive with a renewed magic. The oppressive darkness receded, replaced by a subtle luminescence that bathed the shelves in a warm glow. It was as if the library itself breathed anew, whispering secrets not of captivity but of sanctuary. I moved through the aisles, fingers brushing over spines that held dreams and memories. Each book was a story, a soul yearning for freedom, and now I was their guardian, no longer a frightened runaway, but a protector who understood the delicate balance between sacrifice and salvation. Pausing before a tome once bound by the Curator's curse, I closed it gently, the leather cool beneath my touch. The familiar ache of lost years echoed within me, but alongside it burned a fierce determination. I would not let the library become a prison again. I would safeguard its knowledge with empathy, ensuring that the cost was never paid in silence or despair. Outside, the city slumbered, unaware beneath a blanket of stars. But here, within these ancient walls, a new chapter was beginning. The sleeping library awoke, its magic transformed, its heart open. And I stood watch, ready to guide those who would come seeking refuge, knowledge, and healing. The lessons of the Curator's legacy were etched in my soul, a reminder that power without compassion is a cage, and that true guardianship is an act of love and sacrifice. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and the echoes of the past, but for the first time, I felt a quiet hope, an ember of light in the lingering darkness. "This is our home now," I whispered to the sleeping souls around me. "And here, you will dream freely." The library seemed to answer with a soft sigh, a promise woven into the very air, a promise of renewal, resilience, and the delicate, enduring power of compassion. The air was no longer heavy with silence or the scent of forgotten years, but hummed with a gentle, vibrant magic that breathed life into every corner of the vast sanctuary. I stood at the grand archway, my fingers brushing against the smooth spines of books that now shimmered softly. Their dreaming souls stirred not by imprisonment, but by newfound hope. The library had awakened. The transformation was subtle at first, the faint pulse of light beneath the cracked leather covers, the soft murmurings of voices no longer trapped in despair, but whispering stories of renewal. I could feel it in the air, a warmth that wrapped around me like a comforting cloak, a promise that this place was no longer a cage, but a refuge, a place where knowledge and magic were shared freely, not hoarded. Eleanor appeared beside me, her ethereal form shimmering with a pale blue glow that drifted like mist. Her face bore the gentle melancholy of all who had suffered long yet carried hope still. "You have done what many could not," she said softly, her voice weaving through the light like a tender breeze. "The library breathes because you dared to dream beyond the bindings." I met her gaze, feeling the weight of her farewell in the quiet between us. "I will guard it," I promised, the words feeling both heavy and freeing, not as a prisoner, but as a protector. Her smile was a fleeting thing, like the last star before dawn. "Then I can rest," she whispered, her form dissolving into a cascade of shimmering motes that danced upward, scattering into the morning light. The library seemed to sigh in relief, the shadows retreating as warmth filled the space. From the farthest stacks, a portal shimmered open, and through it stepped Tamsin. Her dark curls framed a face alight with fierce freedom and gratitude. She glanced at me, eyes blazing with the fire of release, and with a nod, she turned away, crossing the threshold into the waking world. Her departure was a bittersweet echo of sacrifice and new beginnings, a reminder of the price paid for this dawn. I watched her go, a pang of loss mingled with pride stirring within me. The library was no longer just mine or the souls trapped within its pages. It was a living, breathing entity, a beacon for those who sought refuge from the storm outside. In the quiet alcove near the entrance, Milo settled into my lap, his fur warm and soft against my skin, his eyes glimmering with an inscrutable knowing, met mine, grounding me to this moment, this fragile balance between dream and reality. His steady purr was a balm to my restless heart, a reminder that even in magic, there is comfort to be found in small, steady things. I arose, the weight of my new role settling around me like a mantle. The library awaited, alive and vibrant, no longer shadowed by curse or captivity, but radiant with possibility. I would guide those who came seeking knowledge, healing, and sanctuary. I would protect the fragile boundary between dreams and waking, sacrifice and freedom. Because this library, this place of whispered secrets and dreaming souls, was my home now, and I would keep its heart beating for as long as I could. Outside, the city still stirred awake, the world turning as it always had. But here, within these walls, a new chapter was beginning, one written not in loss, but in hope. And as the first visitors tentatively crossed the threshold, I smiled, ready to welcome them into the sleeping library that had finally awoken. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, the path ahead was lit by more than just the fading embers of sacrifice. It was lit by the enduring light of connection, renewal, and the unyielding courage of a girl who dared to turn the page.